Well, new fallout tonight from a New York Times report suggesting presidential candidate Donald Trump is losing traction with the media and the voters. The Times uses a media research company to look at how often the candidate is mentioned in media reports. For example, when the GOP frontrunner shared Senator Lindsey Graham's personal phone number, remember that? It got mentioned 34,000 times. But when Trump pranked Marco Rubio this week, just 7,500 mentions. Leading the New York Times to proclaim Donald Trump's act seems to be wearing out its welcome. But is that true? Fox News digital politics editor Chris Stirewalt is here, along with the host of Mediabuzz, Howard Kurtz. Great to see you both. So there is a metric by which you can measure how talked about any given candidate is, and the New York Times says this metric does not have good news for Donald Trump, Chris.
Well, there are, what's the lies, damn lies, statisticians. There's all kinds of metrics that you can measure anything by. If you were Donald Trump, you'd say that the metric that you care about is that you're leading in the polls. And that continues to be the case. But there is something instructive here for Trump, and I think he knows it. The act is wearing thin in the sense that if you want to grow and expand to get to the nomination, to get outside of that about 25% of the party that he's steadily held since the middle of July, you got to have new material. You can't just be Triumph the Insult comic dog all the way through. And I think you're starting to see that as he goes through and tries to be more substantive, tries to be more serious, and dials back on some of the really bonkers stuff.
Mm-hmm. But what do you make of it, Howie? Because he pranked Rubio by sending him the water, and that got much publicity, but not that much. Was it that it just wasn't as funny as the Graham thing, or is there a larger message to be read into that?
It wasn't as funny, and look, the novelty is wearing off a little bit. Even Trump says he hasn't bought any commercials yet because he doesn't want the public to OD on him. I mean, it seems to me that instead of being covered 24 hours a day, he's being covered 20 hours a day. Some other candidates are getting some coverage. I mean, candidates would run over their grandmothers to get the kind of exposure that Donald Trump is getting.
Nana.
It's a Nixonian phrase.
Who specifically? I want to know. They're not getting anybody's vote. Okay, but you look at these polls, Chris, and they talk about how, O'Reilly once read an update saying that he was voted the most loved news host in the country and the most hated. And in typical Bill fashion, he loved that.
Well,
Trump has the same position in these polls. He's atop of almost all these polls, and he's atop the list of the people they would never vote for.
Right. And so he's trying to sort of go legit. He's trying to go mainstream. He told the Washington Post he's going to buy some TV ads in the weeks to come. He is having more substantive discussions, got himself into a little trouble on that, talking about eminent domain with Bret Baier yesterday. But he's trying to be more of a normal candidate as opposed to just surfing this crazy zeitgeist. However, it's a tough line to walk. Remember Evel Knievel? And if everybody came to see him jump the Grand Canyon, you can't get up there and say, I'm going to jump the Grand Canyon. Well, actually, I'm going to ride a donkey down this side of the Grand Canyon and then come back up the other side. You got to jump, baby. They came to see him jump the canyon. He's got to keep giving his supporters what they want, which is outrageous, and it's got to be slashing and burning through the political establishment. If he starts to get a little balky about that, he'll have trouble with his base.
But the question is how, as the New York Times posits, whether outrageous has run its course. And people are starting to tire of antics, and they want him to focus on policy.
Well, he's done that in part by putting out a detailed tax cut plan. And at the same time,
there's no question. He has been. But he's also been doing the other stuff.
But if the media is so tired of Donald Trump, why is it that in the last 4 days he's been on Fox with Bret Baier, he's been on CNN, he's been on...
how have the ratings been?
The Sunday show, the ratings have been fine. That's why people keep putting him on.
That's not true. That's not true. There isn't the same spike as there used to be.
Okay, well, you can't, be up at that stratospheric level forever, and other candidates are getting more airtime. But there's one other sentence I want to call out in this Times piece, Megyn. A bit condescending. Fox News opinion commentator, says the Times, no longer go on breathlessly about Mr. Trump's antics. Well, I don't think they ever did that. What happened is many commentators, conservative commentators at Fox, don't like Trump because they don't think he's a real conservative. That's not the same thing as the mainstream media tiring of him. That's more ideological in nature.
Well, and listen, when he was first, sort of rising there in the polls, Stirewalt, and saying all this stuff, I mean, he had the entire country's attention.
Right.
Love him or hate him, everyone was paying attention to him. The question is that stopping? Are we seeing an end to that?
He's got to figure out, and look, he's trying to do it. He's hiring staff. He's trying to become more of a normal candidate who has a structure and has an organization that will take him through the early states so that it isn't just, again, when the zeitgeist wave crashes, that he is washed up. He's trying to beat that. However, when we look at the poll that you mentioned earlier, the Quinnipiac University poll for Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, when we look at that poll, we see that he, Jeb Bush, and Hillary Clinton have the same problem. They're liked by some, but disliked by a lot.
And also, the other thing is, you have to win at least 2 of those states. You have to win at least 2 of those states if you want to win the election. And he's leading in those states, right? He is leading. Since 1960, no candidate has won the White House without taking 2 of the 3 swing states of Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. He's leading among Republicans, but, I mean, the Republicans have to pick the person they think can win. I realize that he's got worse chances in the general election than some of these other Republicans, but you got to get the nomination first. So the rest of the guys would trade places with him in a minute when it comes to those leads. Maybe. I don't know. You tell me. I got to go. Good to see you both. Donkey.